Hey everyone, welcome back to another session on Azure for data engineers. In today's video, we are going to talk about one of the most important Azure services, which is Azure Data Factory. Now, the good news is you don't need any prerequisites to follow along. This video is meant for absolute beginners. So even if you have never used Azure Data Factory before, or if you're completely new to data engineering, you're in the right place. By the end of this session, you'll know exactly what Azure Data Factory is, why it matters for data engineers, and you will also get a sense of the kind of tasks data engineers usually work on with this tool. And since this video is designed for beginners, I'll be using a real-world analogy to explain things and connect it to Azure Data Factory. In that way, you'll have a simple and practical way to understand how it works before we dive deep into the technical details. Alright, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is Azure Data Factory? It is a cloud-based ETL and data integration service offered by Microsoft. So ETL or data integration service, what does that mean? We are just talking about moving data from one place to another. For example, you might have data sitting in your source system, like a database or a file storage, and you need to move it to a destination system. Say, for example, a data warehouse or some other data storage containers where it can be further analyzed. That's exactly what Data Factory helps you to do, facilitating this movement of data from one place to another. So you can create and schedule data-driven workflows. So data-driven workflows, also called as pipelines, it means the steps. In order to move the data from your source to the destination, you need to perform a couple of steps. A pipeline is where you define those steps. So once those steps are defined, you want this process to continue or go on a continuous basis, on a regular basis. So that is when you schedule it. You specify how often you need to facilitate this data movement. Should it be like once a day, once a week, on the 5th of every month, once every hour, or when some other event happens? It can be event driven. When a file lands into a particular storage layer, you want this pipeline to run and this data to be moved into the destination. So all these things you can define in an Azure Data Factory. Now let's jump into the analogy. For a moment, forget about moving data. Let's think about moving something we all find interesting. It's summer season here, so let's talk about an example of a big retail chain like Walmart, which sells a wide variety of products. One of these products is fruits. So let me move into my analogy. Okay. So in order to deliver fruits to the customers at different store locations, Walmart first needs to collect these fruits from the source. The source here is, of course, the farm. And these fruits, it won't go directly into the stores. First, it will go through some warehouse or a processing facility, and we perform some steps like the fruits get cleaned, they get sorted, bad fruits get removed, and then we will be doing some repackaging, maybe into crates based on what the stores need. Only after all this processing, the fruits get shipped out to different stores for the customers to buy. Now let's compare this to the world of data. Suppose you're working as a data engineer for a manufacturing company, and you're being assigned a data integration workflow project. Your company basically works with several vendors who supply temporary contract workers. We have talked about this project in our Python videos as well. We have seen how to facilitate this data flow using Python. As we are focusing on Azure, we will try to do the same project using Azure Data Factory. So for those who haven't watched that video, I'll give you a brief introduction about the project. So these vendors at the end of each week or maybe at the end of every month, they will send the details about the contract workers. Things like the hours worked, the pay codes, invoice details, and so on. Usually this data comes in files like Excel, sheet, or CSV files. As a data engineer, your company is expecting you to collect, process, and organize this data so that the different teams can use this data. By different teams, I mean it could be used by the finance team for payroll processing, or it could be used by the operations team to create reports about the contract hires, or even the management to make decisions. So to facilitate this movement of data from this um, source point where the vendors share it, let's assume that the vendors share this data through Azure Blob Storage. We can assume that each vendor could have their own container and they drop the files there. And your job as a data engineer is to bring this data to the presentation layer, which could be an SQL database or a Power BI report. So you can handle this workflow, this movement of data from the source to the presentation layer using two ways. One is you can bring this raw data into a data warehouse and then use the compute power of the warehouse to do all the transformations. For example, if your company uses Snowflake, this is a model you can follow. This process is called extract, load, and transform. First, we extract the data, the raw data. We put it into a raw table. Then from this table, maybe we define some stored procedures or something which will do all the transformations, and the data will be available for the presentation layer. Or the second way is you can use the built-in Azure feature called data flow. This allows you to perform some transformations while the data is moving. And behind the scene, these are like Spark jobs, but you don't have to write any program, SQL code or Python code or anything. You just use the UI and specify what kind of transformation needs to be done. It could be cleaning of the data, adding any extra columns, running quality checks, and then you can load this data into the presentation layer. So if you follow this flow, then it is called ETL, because first we extract, then we perform the transformation, and then we load it into the presentation layer. So in both cases, you can use Azure Data Factory as the orchestrator. Just like Walmart's warehouse coordinates the movement of data from source to the destination, which is the stores, Azure Data Factory coordinates the flow of data from its source to the destination. Okay, now that we understand the purpose of Azure Data Factory, let's get some hands-on experience. So we will head over to Azure portal and I'll show you how to create a brand new data factory instance step by step. Now that I'm in my Azure portal, I can create a data factory from here. You can directly choose data factory from here, or you can go here and type out the service name, data factories. And here I already have a bunch of data factories. If you join an organization, I'll give you some hint of how the data factories are structured in a real organization, so that you won't be just having beginner level knowledge. You will have all the knowledge of intermediate level engineer as well. So usually companies will have um, data factories or subscriptions for every department if it is a big organization, and within that subscription you will have a multiple data factories. Here I have named it as ADF because it is an Azure Data Factory. The company name Algorito, and department name. So let's say I work for Data Analytics and Insights department. So this is the department name, and then this is the Dev Data Factory. All the development happens in the Dev Data Factory. In the same way, once the development are confirmed, then we can push these changes into a QA data factory where the QA people can do their testing. And once everything is looking good, the changes can be pushed into the production data factory. So this is one way we can do. And then another thing is the development happens using the UI, but deploying this data factory and its components into the other environments, we can do it using CI/CD. In the later videos, we will talk about CI/CD and how we can promote these changes into other environments. So stay tuned and watch those other videos if you want to get the pro level understanding about Azure Data Factory. In this video, I won't be going into those details because this is a beginner friendly one. So let's create a brand new data factory for our demo purpose. So come to create, and then you need to choose the subscription. In my case, this is a trial account, so I only have one subscription. I'll just choose that, but if you are working for a company that has multiple subscriptions, then there may be a non-prod subscription, there will be a separate subscription for production, so you need to choose the correct subscription. Next, we need to choose the resource group. If you want to know more about resource group, you can check the Azure Key Concepts video where I explain about resource groups. It's just a container, so you can create multiple resources within your Azure subscription. So in order to organize them, group them, you can use resource groups. So you can follow along the video and create a resource group. If you don't already have a resource group, you can create a new from here. So if I click the drop down here, I do have a couple of resource groups. Resource groups, I give the prefix RG, stands for resource group. Again, the same kind of naming convention. Algorito, department name. The dev resource group will have all the resources created for the dev environment. The QA resource group will have all the resources for the QA environment and prod. So for now, let me create a new resource group. I'm gonna name it Algorito ADF demo. Okay, and now we need to give a name for the data factory. So as it is a data factory, I am going to prefix it with ADF, and then demo 1. Yeah, I'll just name it ADF demo 1. Then you need to specify the region. So depending on your other resources, where is your location of the other resources that you're going to be connecting with, like your source database, your destination, your storage account, etc. You need to decide which region you want. For now, I'll just keep the default, and you choose the version 2. That's the only option available now. Okay, so now I'm getting an error. The data factory name is already taken. So the data factory name is kind of globally unique. So if somebody else has named their data factory as ADF demo 1, I cannot use that name. So the best way is um, add your more suffixes that are relevant to us. For example, your name, if it is your personal account or if it is your company account, you can add your company name, department name, etc. so that it will be globally unique. So ADF Algorito demo 1, let's see. Yeah, that seems available. These are the only basic things needed for creating a data factory. There is Git configuration. We will discuss about configuring Git once you get familiar, once you get comfortable with the data factory. For now, we can skip that part. And then networking also, for now, we can skip that part. This is going to be a beginner friendly one. So I'm just going to be the I'm not going to adding any complexity. So everything is going to be the default one. So I'm not adding any tags as well. So let's just create. So only things I have filled out is I selected the subscription. I provided the resource group name. In this case, I have created a new resource group. Then I have provided a name for the data factory. I selected the region. If you want to know more about the region, you can again check the Azure core concepts videos where we talk about the Azure global infrastructure. All others are just the default. Now you just click the create, and then this Azure Data Factory resource will be deployed for you. It will just take a couple of seconds. Let's Okay, so it's already created. Now if you click on go to resource, it will take you to that Azure Data Factory. Oops. It has just created the resource group. This is not the data factory. Okay, data factory is available. I just click the refresh button, and if you click on the data factory, this is the first view that you get. In order to actually work with the data factory, you need to go into the Azure Data Factory Studio. So to do that, just click on this button. Okay, now that our data factory is created, let's build our very first pipeline. But before that, first let me do a quick walkthrough of this Azure Data Factory Studio, the screen here. So this is the place where we do all our development. So this is the home page, and there are a few more sections here. First we have an author section. This is where we will be defining our pipelines. We can create new pipelines, data sets, data flows. So we will create everything here. So think of this as the main workspace. You spend majority of your time in this window here. Then there is a monitor tab. So this is where you can monitor your pipeline runs, trigger runs, whether it was successful, failure, and then you can dig into the details. As we build more complex pipelines, we will come back here and then drill down into the individual steps, what went wrong. So this is where we do all the monitoring. Then we also have a manage tab. This is where you handle the configuration settings. This is like an area where that you visit maybe once in a while when you are building a new project for the first time. You need to create link surveys. You will come here. Once you say, for example, your company uses Snowflake and then storage account. So for the first time when you create a project, you need to create link service. You will come here. But once it's created, you don't come here that often. So whenever you need to bring any new data flow pipelines, you will just do the development here. So this is like configuration settings. Then if you want to configure Git when you're ready, you will come here. So this is also a one-time setup. Once it's configured, you don't have to do it again. And then few other options are there, triggers, global parameters and all. We will talk more about it when we start building more complex pipelines. Then there is also this learning center from Microsoft. It provides some tutorials and videos that you can browse if you want to go deeper on your own. So now that we are familiar with the ADF Studio, let me talk about the pipeline that we are going to build. So to build the pipeline, we should have some understanding about some top level components. So these are the top level concepts related to Azure Data Factory. We should know what is a pipeline. Inside the pipeline, we will have a number of activities. These are the steps that happens within the pipeline. And some of the steps could be a copy data activity. So the copy data activity is to move data from X to Y. So in order to do the copy activity, you should be able to establish a connection with the point X and connection with point Y. So that connection can be established using linked services. Then after establishing the connection, you should also be able to know. So for example, if you want to connect to an Azure SQL database, so link service will establish that connection. But in the database, there are so many tables. You should know what table to connect to. Or if you are establishing a connection with the storage, a blob storage, there should be a lot of containers. There will be number of files, which file to bring in, what data type it is. Those kind of information you provide using dataset. Then for doing transformations, we have data flows. Then the compute behind it, how these things are running, that is the integration runtime. Don't worry, we will talk more in depth about each of these concepts. I don't want to give you the technical definition and overview, so let's jump back into example. This time we will be looking at a simple example and how these components come into place and how we can create these components or use these components and build our pipeline. When I was first learning about Azure Data Factory, all these different components, understanding them kind of felt overwhelming for me. That's why I'm trying to make this as simple as for you, this learning journey. So we will combine with some diagrams. The approach that I'm going to follow is for every pipeline, whether it's a simple pipeline with just one activity or whether it's a complex pipeline with multiple dependencies. First, we will begin with what is the objective, what are we trying to accomplish using simple layman terms, and then we will try to explain it using some diagram, and only then we will dive into the technical details of it. So for our pipeline, what I'm trying to build is for every pipeline, so there should be a source and then there will be a destination. So for this pipeline, it's the same contract hire example. Oops. Let's see. Storage kind of diagram. Okay. I'll just use a square for now. And this one here. So our source is going to be Azure Blob Storage. So our vendors are going to put a CSV file in Azure's Blob Storage container. So there will be some CSV files. Let's see whether I have an icon for file. Yes, I do have. So for now, for this particular pipeline, let's stick with some simple, just one file. Then we will build on this project. We will talk about how to load multiple files, how to load files from multiple vendors, how to load from multiple containers, etc. For this demo, let's keep it simple. Let's assume that there is just one file in our blob container, which is a CSV file, and our task is to bring this into Azure SQL database. There is already a table and we just need to bring this file contents into the table. We are not doing any transformation in it, nothing fancy, just simple data ingestion from storage into a database table. That's all we are going to do. And this will be done, of course, by using our Azure Data Factory. So ADF, let's think about it. So ADF will need to connect to this Azure Blob storage so that it can fetch this file. Once it get that file, then it again needs to connect to this SQL database so that it can put the content of this file into this database. So in order for ADF to connect to this Azure Blob storage, we need something. So first step is connecting to this um, I'll write it here. First step, connect to blob storage. This is done by using linked service. So we need to create a linked service for connecting to our blob storage. Then we also need to connect to our SQL database. So that is going to be our second step. Connect to Azure SQL. So any type of connection, if you want to make a connection, we will be using link service. So we need to create one link service for blob, one link service for SQL. Azure Data Factory has inbuilt connectors. You don't have to write any code. You just need to use that built-in, ready to use connectors available. I'll show you how to do that. So once you establish that connection, um, let's come back to our farm example. So if we are sending a truck to fetch some fruits from a farm, of course we need to provide the address of the farm and the contact person, maybe some information we need to provide. And this truck driver should be carrying some uh, ID maybe to authenticate or to identify himself as an employee from Walmart so that the farm people will let him inside the farm. But once he's inside the farm, let's assume that it's a very big farm, acres of land, and there are so many different trees or so many different fruits available. So establishing that connection doesn't mean that the truck driver knows which fruit to pick or where to pick the fruits. So those additional information we provide using something called as dataset. So the next step is um, creating the dataset for our source. So step 3 is going to be create source dataset. So while creating the source dataset, we need to provide the qualities of the source dataset. So this is going to be a CSV file, and then where is the location? So within the storage account, at what location this file is present. Those kind of specific details we will provide. Similarly, for the destination also, establishing the connection to SQL database is done. You have provided your authentication credentials, but which table you need to connect to, and those kind of information you will provide again using dataset. So destination dataset. This is done using destination dataset, source dataset. So once all these source connection, source dataset, destination connection, destination dataset is available, now ADF can move the data from here to here. So how does ADF do that? That is what done by using something called as pipeline. So that is going to be our final step. Create pipeline. So in this pipeline, we use a copy activity, and we move the data. Then if you want this process to continue on a regular basis, say for example every day or every month or on the 5th of every month, then you need to set up something called as triggers. So you need to schedule the triggers, create and schedule trigger. That's going to be our next step. And then if you want to set up any alerts and monitoring, if you want to be notified when this pipeline fails, so if you don't set up alerts or if you regularly go and monitor, you will never know that this file, for some reason, this for example the CSV file has an extra column, so when it tried to put that data into the database table, it failed. So if you don't set up alerts and metrics, we may never know. So set up alerts and metrics is the another step that we can do. So these ones below the line, we will talk about them later. First I want you to uh, com get comfortable with using ADF and building the basic things first. Okay, so now I'm back at my Azure portal so that I can build our pipeline. Again, the data flow is from Azure Blob Storage into Azure SQL Database. Now let me talk about some prerequisites. So when you join a pretty big, medium-sized or a big organization, the infrastructure team will be setting up this Azure SQL database, Azure Blob Storage, all those kind of stuff. Even the Azure Data Factory will be available. Your role as a data engineer is to just get the access to this ADF. If it is not available, you raise a ticket, a ServiceNow or whatever IT ticket system your company follows. Once you get the access, you will immediately come here and start building pipeline. So that is why we have the subscription option via Algorito, where you will be added as a user with all the infrastructure setup that's already uh, set up for you. So if you are a complete beginner, you don't have to worry about all these steps, because if you're not familiar with Azure and then if you're building all these infrastructure setup steps as well, you will be feeling kind of lost. You don't know what are the skills that you need to focus on as a data engineer. You will be trying to learn everything, and then at the end you feel so confused and you feel like you don't understand anything at all. If you have some understanding about Azure, and if you're comfortable with infrastructure setup, so this is the prerequisite. You need to first set up an Azure Blob Storage account with a single container and an Azure SQL database. And if you would love a challenge, if you want to set this up by yourself, I've covered that as well in another video. There is a series called Azure Infrastructure Setup. In that video, you can check out how to create this Azure SQL database, Azure Blob Storage, and different details you should know when you are doing those setup. But if you are a complete beginner, I would recommend following the Algorito subscription path, where you don't have to worry about setting up this. Your job is only to facilitate this flow from source to destination. That itself has so many steps. So let's try to understand those steps first, get comfortable using Azure Data Factory and using these kind of steps, how to do that. Then you can go into the infrastructure path. So in order to create the pipeline, first you will be coming to this section here, pipelines, and you can click here and click new pipeline. So this is the work area where we will be building our pipeline. So our pipeline, it has only one activity, which is moving the data from one place to another. So if you want to move from point A to point B, the kind of activity you need is copy activity. So in this section here, these are the different kind of activities that are available for you to use in a pipeline. So a pipeline can have a Databricks notebook, a pipeline can have a data flow, a pipeline can run Azure function, it can have copy data activity, and the list just goes on. You can have for loop, if condition, switch statement, you can set variables. So there are so many activities available. We will start with the very basic or must know activities, and then we will learn more about a lot of other activities as well if you keep watching the subsequent videos. So for this pipeline, we are just going to move data from point A to point B. So we just need copy data activity. You can also type here. If you type copy, you will see copy data activity. So you just find the activity you need to add to your pipeline, drag and drop here. So that is how. So this is a UI. You don't have to write even a single line of code. That's the beauty of Azure Data Factory. So you have the pipeline here. There are so many settings. Again, in this beginner friendly session, I will only talk about the necessary settings that cannot be skipped. Then as you get more comfortable, as we go into complex pipeline, I'll cover those other additional settings. But for now, just focus on only what is necessary. So far what we have done is we have clicked here and created a new pipeline. So this is the pipeline, and then we have added a copy data activity into our pipeline, and we can give a name to a pipeline. So currently it's named as pipeline 1. So let me add some meaningful name. So pipeline, as it is a pipeline, I'm gonna name it PL underscore. This is going to be contract hire data load. So I just named it that way. I'm not gonna add any description because it's not mandatory. Only those things mentioned with the star are mandatory. Okay, so I have named the pipeline. Now if you click outside, these are all settings related to the pipeline. If you click on one of the activity, then the settings has changed. If I click outside, these are the settings for the entire pipeline. If I click here, these are the settings for this specific activity that I have selected, which is copy data activity. So here again, some star options. First, we need to give this a meaningful name. Copy data from blob to SQL. Okay, have given it a name, and other settings for now we can just ignore it. Let's keep the default values. Now we need to provide the source and sink. So copy data means it is going to move data from source to sink. So we need to provide the source. It's looking for a data set. If you click the drop down, we don't have any data set. Then we need to provide the sink. Again, for sink also, it's looking for a data set. We don't have any data set. Let's go back to our diagram here. So as I mentioned earlier, the first step is we need to create a link service. So why we need to create link service? So let's go backwards. So in order to create copy data activity, we need dataset. So let's see how to create dataset. If we go here, just like we created pipeline, here also we can click the three dots here and new dataset. Now we need to create two datasets as per this diagram. Source dataset and destination. The source is going to be a CSV file. So here I need to look for CSV or delimited text file. Okay, so sorry. Source is going to be Azure Blob Storage. I need to choose that, and then delimited text. And then when I check here, it's asking for link service. So the prerequisite here is we first should have a link service. Only then we can create a dataset. So let's cancel out of here. If you try to click anywhere in this screen now, when this right side pop out pane is open, you won't be able to do anything. So you may feel that why I'm not able to click anywhere. First you need to click cancel, and you can discard the changes. We will come back here and do this later. So first we need to create the dataset. First we need to create the link service. That's why in this diagram I have explained in the order in which we need to create the things. So you might think that I just want to create a pipeline, why I should do all these steps? Because in order to create the pipeline, you need dataset. In order to create the dataset, you need link service. Okay. Another prerequisite is, so we should have the Azure Blob Storage and SQL readily available. So for the Algorito subscribed members, we will be providing you the details of the Azure SQL database and the username and password that you can use to connect to the database. Um, so let me just show you where it is. So if I go here, SQL databases, this is the SQL database I'm going to connect to. If I click here, I can see some information. We will come back and get some information, so I'm just gonna keep it open, and let me do something. In the Azure SQL database infra setup video, I have covered in depth about the different things related to this interface you see here. For now, you just need to know how to access the SQL database from Azure portal. This is how you come here. Then there is an interesting feature called query editor. So you can run SQL queries by going to this query editor. So I need to provide the username and password. So let me get my password. Let me connect. Let me show you the table first. If it is not empty, I want to truncate it. While it's waiting, let me also show you the storage account. So in order to get the storage account, I type storage account, and then let me show you the storage account I have. This is the source. So this is the name of the storage account. SA stands for storage account. And again, in here, there are so many things. Don't get lost. The only thing you need to focus on under storage account is under data storage containers. So storage account is used for storing data. So you need to come to this data storage. You can have different kind of storage. Our focus is data stored inside container. Again, I have covered in depth about storage account, the kind of storage and everything in Azure infrastructure, Azure core concepts. The links to those videos will be added in the description. You can check out those videos if you want more in-depth details. As the focus of this session is Azure Data Factory, I won't be talking about those. So when you come to container, in the storage account, currently I only have one container, that is inbound. So if I click to that, I am inside the inbound container. There is one file called as contract hire CSV. Okay, so if you want to, I have already uploaded this file. If you want to have a look at how the data looks like, you can just download it and open it. Okay, so this is a sample data. There is a header column, header row. First row is the header, and then we have bunch of data available here. So we want to insert all this data into our SQL database. That is the goal. So let's go back to our SQL. It's still not connected. Let me try again. Sometimes when you try the first time, it will give an error. You just need to click submit again. So this is the SQL database. So there are some inbuilt tables because I created this database with some sample data. Uh, I have already created this table. This is an extra table that I have created. The definition of this table, there is a Git repo with all the resources related to these videos. You can check out that Git repo for the SQL code for creating this table. So let me just query this table. Just simple SQL statement. Select start from raw contract hire stage. Let me see whether I have any data in there from my previous run. So I select this and run it. I do have the data. So let me just truncate it so that you will see how the data is getting inserted. So truncate table, raw. Okay. Now if I query again, select star from, you don't have to run the truncate statement if the data is not already there. If you want to witness the data getting inserted, now you can see that only there is no rows inside this table. So this is the table to which we will be inserting the data from our CSV file. Okay, so this is the infrastructure setup needed. And now let's jump back into our pipeline building. So our first step is connect to blob. So in order to connect to blob, we need to create a linked service. In order for the ADF to connect to the blob and get this file, first we need to create a linked service. So for creating linked service, this is like a once in a while activity. We need to come to this manage tab. Dataset and pipeline is available in the other tab, but link service is available in the manage tab. And you can see connections. Under the connections, you can see the link service. So you can click on new here, or you can also click create link service. So these are all the different connectors available. So we need to specify to which kind of source we want to connect. So our source is Azure Blob. So I'll select Azure Blob Storage and then continue. And then I can give a name for this link service. I'll give it a name, link service blob. I can keep it generic, or I can provide the project name as well. Okay, so I'll just give that contract hire the project name as well. So there are so many settings. One thing that you must provide is the name for the link service. I would recommend prefixing it with ls, stands for link service. Then how to connect to this blob. For simplicity, for now we will be using blob storage from our own subscription. So we are not going to use any keys or connection strings. It's going to be from our Azure subscription. So you just need to come here and select your subscription. Then it will automatically list all the storage accounts available. If you have more than one storage account, all those will get listed here. I have only one storage account, so I'll just select that one. Okay, so we have given a name for the link service, and we have selected our Azure subscription and selected the storage account, which is the source. And then test connection is to linked service. You can do the test connection button here. So if you get a green check mark, that means connection is successful. So that's everything. So that's all you need to know to create a very basic link service to your Azure Blob Storage. This is to enable ADF to connect to the Blob Storage. So we have provided the name, the subscription in which the Azure Blob Storage is created, the name of the Azure Blob Storage, and that's it. Let me create it. Next, the second step is connect to Azure SQL. So for that, again, for whenever you need to connect, you need a link service. So this time, earlier we chose blob. Now we need to connect to Azure SQL. So I'll type Azure SQL database. Okay, and continue. And again, I'll give it a name, link service, SQL, contract hire. Okay, now for the SQL, again, I select the subscription and the server name and database name. So these things are automatically getting populated. Um, Now we need to provide the authentication type because database is more secure. So when I created the database, I have chosen SQL authentication. So you need to choose SQL authentication here and provide the username and password. So let me provide the username and the password. For now, we will directly provide the password, but the recommended approach is using Azure Key Vault. That will add more complexity. We will definitely cover those in the later videos. For now, let's keep it simple. So I'll directly key in the password here. And that's it. Let me try the test connection. While it's trying to connect, let me revise. Okay, test connection is successful. So for creating the link service to the Azure SQL database, I have provided the name of the link service, which is selected the subscription and selected the server name and the database name. Then I have chosen SQL authentication and provided the username and password for the SQL authentication. Now let me just create it. Okay, so the link services are ready. The next step is, so this is done, this is done. Next step is create the source data set. So for creating data set, it's not here. You need to come back here to other tab. And here we have a pipeline section. Here we have a data set. So click here, new data set, and the source data set. Source is blob. So Azure Blob Storage, click continue, and we have different file formats. Our file is a CSV file, so I'm gonna choose the limited text. Then as it is a data set, I'm gonna name it DS, and yeah, blob contract hire. Okay, now it will list the blob link services available. So this is the link service we have created, and here you can provide more details. So this linked service will help you connect to this blob, but within the blob um, we can have n number of containers, and within the containers we can have multiple folders. If it is a data lake storage, a blob storage, we cannot have folders, but yeah, we can have different file names, so many different files. So we can specify we want to get only files that starts with something, or that ends with something, or only the CSV files. Those kind of specific details, how exactly get the required file within the storage account. Those details are specified in the data set when we are creating the data set. So link service will help you connect to the blob container. It's like if you're visiting a government facility, you need to, if you don't know how to go there, in the Google map, you type the address. So it will take you to that facility. But once you reach that facility, if you want to reach a specific department and meet with someone, you need the details of those details that are internal to them. So those details you provide using the dataset. Okay, in my case, the container name is inbound. So I'm gonna provide the container name here, inbound. There is no directory inside inbound, it's directly available. So I don't have to provide any directory. File name, either you can specify file name here, or you can specify that in the pipeline as well. For now, I'm not specifying the file name. I'm just gonna click OK. And there is this setting, first row as header. We have already examined the file, and it does have first row as a header. Otherwise, it will load the first row as a data row. We don't want that to happen. So you make sure that this is checked. Okay, click OK so that it will create the data set. Now we need to create one more data set. For the destination is Azure SQL. So we choose the type of destination and then give the data set. This is the name of the data set. So I'm going to name it dataset SQL contract hire. You didn't like the hyphen? Now there is only one link service available for SQL. I have selected that. Now that it was able to connect to the database, it will list all the tables. I want to specifically connect to this particular table. So I'll select that table and click OK. Okay, so this will create the data set. So we have completed creating the two link services and creating the two data set. Next step is creating the pipeline. We have already started creating the pipeline. We have put the copy data activity. Now click on the copy data, provide the other settings. So come to source, choose the source data set, which is blob, and come to sing and choose the sing is dataset SQL. Okay, and source, we haven't provided the file name, so let's use a wildcard file path, anything that ends with a CSV. We only have one file, so I'm just trying to show you the various ways. If you want to load everything available in that folder, this is something that you can use. You can choose a wildcard file path and choose star.csv. That is one way. You can directly provide the file name. In production, we will be using different approach, which we can talk about it later. Okay. And for sync, none of these settings are relevant. Okay. Okay, so the copy data activity does consume some compute. This is the compute cost, 0.25 per hour. So we won't be running it for hours. It's very minimal. So once you have created everything, you can click on this validate button to see whether there are any errors. Errors means if you forgot to provide some necessary settings. For example, for the sync, you didn't provide the sync, and if you try to validate, it will give you copy data from blob to SQL, data set required, sync data set required. So it's giving you that error. So all the required configurations you need to provide. So this is the sync data set. Now if I click on validate, everything looks good. So once I validate it, I can test using debug. So when I click the debug button here, if I expand this, it will take a little bit of time. It's currently queued. You can check the status of your pipeline run here, or you can go to the monitor tab. There also you can see. So you can see that it's successful. If you hover over here, you can see three icons. These are going to be your best friends. So this is the input to this activity. Source delimited. For now, I don't want to go into the details and overwhelm you, but when there is some error, this is where you check how much data read, number of files read, number of rows read, copy duration is 12 seconds. Yeah, all those information. It shows that, yeah, 500 records are there. So you can do a quick check here. Rows read, rows copied, 500. So it's both same. So that means all the data that was read was copied. And yeah, so if there is any failures, again, you click on this glasses kind of thing. to get more details about it, the time duration when you want to optimize or troubleshoot, you can get a look at it for getting more details. For now, we just want to make sure that we get a green tick. Let me show you the same in the monitor tab. If you go to pipeline runs, and if you go to debug tab, so there are two types of pipeline runs: triggered and debug. Triggered is once everything is ready, you will create trigger so that uh, for example, the simplest trigger is a schedule or cron trigger. So every day at 8 o'clock you want to run, so you will set up a create trigger for every day 8 o'clock. So when the time is 8 o'clock, it will automatically run. So such type of run later details will be available here, but we didn't schedule any trigger. We just clicked on the debug button to run our pipeline. So you need to come to the debug tab and click on this, and you will be able to see the same details. So when you have run multiple times, if you want to look at the history of run or look at the error that you got earlier, you can come to this monitor tab, check the pipeline run. Okay, now that we see that our pipeline is running fine, um, if you want to save this, so if you come back, if you don't save this, when you come back, this changes everything, all the development you have done will be gone. So if you want this to be changed, saved, you need to click on this publish all, and these are the things that are going to be published. It will create the data set, it will create the pipeline, so you can click on the publish button. In this way, if you log out and come back again, you will still be able to see the pipeline. Okay, perfect. So for Algorito members, when you are trying to practice this, I would recommend you to use PL underscore abbreviation of your name underscore pipeline. Everything that you create, data set or link service, you stamp it with your name, initial or something, so that because it's a common area used by all the users, so to differentiate your objects from others, you can stamp them with your name. So let's recap everything. So what we have done in this video is we have talked about Azure Data Factory, why it's needed. It's basically a data orchestration or data integration service. It moves data from one place to another. We have looked at that farm example, just like getting the fruits from farm to the individual store. Azure Data Factory is used for moving data from source to destination. In between, we can do transformations as well. And we have seen one demo pipeline where it was just a simple pipeline, just one activity. We are getting the data from we are getting data from a file and loading it into Azure SQL database. In order to do that, there are a couple of steps. We need to connect to the source and destination. For that, we use link service. Then we need to provide additional details about the source and destination. For that, we create a data set. And then what needs to be done? The different steps. Here only one step. So we created a pipeline and provided the details of the step. We haven't covered these things. This we will cover little later. I want you to familiarize with these concepts, how to create link service, dataset, and pipeline first. After a couple of videos, we will cover how to create triggers and schedules and alerts and everything. Now let me go back to my presentation. Let me revise these top level concepts one more time. So we know what is a pipeline now, and we know what is activity. We used copy activity in our example. We know what is a data set. For creating data set, we need link service. This is for establishing that connection. Then we have data flow. Then the integration runtime. Integration runtime is the compute behind the scenes. So let me go through them one more time with the farm analogy. The pipeline is, in case of farm, um, it's like the detailed schedule. Go to this particular farm, get 100 crates of apple from warehouse A. Oh, sorry, 100 crates of apples sorted warehouse A and delivered to this store. So the entire flow. Just like that, when it comes to ADF, what we mean by a pipeline is the complete workflow. So the complete workflow that orchestrates the data from point A to point B in a logical sequence. If there are dependencies, if there is a task that needs to be done first before doing the second, so we specify that in that order. And we can also have error handling. So we can specify dependencies, we can have error handling, we can have conditional logic. We haven't covered that yet, but these are all the capabilities available. So in our example, this contract hire ETL pipeline that runs every day at 3 a.m. to process new CSV files. This is an example for a pipeline. Okay, moving on to next. What we have is link service. So link services, in case of farm example, the agreements with the farm and the agreement with the store, whatever we need to go to that farm and collect the fruit. When it comes to ADF, connection information and the credentials. So we provided the username password when we were trying to connect to the SQL. And for storage account, we kept it simple. We could have provided a connection string, but we used the same Azure subscription, so we didn't provide additional information. So blob storage connection, SQL database connection. So here we need the server, database credentials, etc. So that is what is link service. Now, next one is dataset. Dataset, in the farm example, you need to get red apples, large box of 50. And the section is, you need to go to section B, row 3. So this is like telling them from where to collect the fruit, from which location. Again, in the store also, you need to provide the information. Produce section, shelf 4, and 200 items you need to put in this particular store. Those kind of specific information, that's what is data set. So when we come to ADF, it's the data structure definitions and the format of your data. This includes the schema, file path, table structure, etc. Okay, we have already seen how to create these data sets. Next is activity. So in our example, we used copy data activity to move the data from point A to point B. Other activities are, we haven't used it yet, data flow activity for performing transformation, email notification, we can have if conditions, and the list just goes on. So individual units of work within a pipeline, that is what is an activity. Next, triggers. Triggers is, it is an automated mechanism that starts the pipeline execution. In our example, we didn't do any automation yet. We just triggered it manually by clicking the debug button. But once we are convinced we have finalized our development, we can automate it by creating a trigger. So daily trigger at 3 a.m. or event trigger. So whenever a new file arrives at a blob storage, immediately trigger the pipeline. So we can set up the trigger in different ways. Next is integration runtime. So again, let me compare with the truck example. So different types of vehicles. For example, if it's local delivery, we can use a small truck, but if it is a produce, we can use refrigerator truck, and then heavy truck for bulk transport. So if you are using truck for transportation, there can be different types of trucks. Just like that, in order to run this, so there is some compute power needed for moving this data from point A to point B. Some compute task needs to done. Where does that compute comes from? So for the pipeline that we just ran, the compute is coming from Azure Integration Runtime. But if you want this to happen within your on-premise or self-hosted integrated runtime or SSIS IR, these are some other options available. For legacy packages, you can use that. But for simplicity, first let's just focus on Azure. Azure itself is providing an integration runtime. So we don't have to do anything. It will automatically pick up. When you create a data factory, it comes with an integration runtime. So whenever you run a pipeline, it will automatically use that integration runtime. But you just need to know that this is what behind the scene runs your pipeline and copies the data. It's a compute power. Next is data flow. This is not something we have discussed in our example pipeline, but I have given you a high level overview. This is used for doing all the transformations. If you want to validate the data, standardize the department code, these are some things that we have done in our Python example. If you want to calculate some tenor or additional columns, if you want to filter out some records, any kind of transformation you need to do, you can provide them using data flows. These are visual data transformation. So if you have done the same project using Python, you were writing a lot of Python code to do all these transformation. With data flow, you can do the same thing using UI. You can just drag and drop and do these transformation. Next is monitoring and logging. This is again something we will discuss later. We have done a little bit of monitoring. We looked at the pipeline execution, whether it was successful. We looked at number of records processed, whether there were any errors. We haven't set up any alerts. We do have the ability to set up the alerts as well. We will discuss that in the later videos. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted to cover in this session on Azure Data Factory for absolute beginners. I hope you all enjoyed, and do practice this multiple times to get yourself familiarized with the different nuances of the interface, just to find your way around this user interface, where to find how to create pipeline, how to create data set, the different terms used here, and also where to find each of that information. And the more you do, it will be very easy for you to do the development um, when it comes to actual projects. So stay tuned and follow along with the other videos. I'll be adding more videos where incrementally we will increase the complexity of the pipeline, and we will see what are the different types of data flow orchestration that we can do using Azure Data Factory. Thanks for watching.